Apple just released the brand new M3 MacBook Pro lineup, and it is a bigger lineup than I was expecting, with a brand new base model M3 MacBook Pro, complete with a 14-inch ProMotion 120Hz display for just $1,599. It is probably going to be a very popular model, and on top of that, they got the new M3 Pro and M3 Max MacBook Pros also coming out with some insane horsepower, and there's a lot of differences between this model, some things you need to know about these MacBook Pros that I want to tell you about in today's video. And of course, I got a nice cup of coffee here because as I'm recording this, it's already past 9 p.m. because Apple decided to hold a late night event, so now we got to do a late night video. But don't worry, it's not gonna be scary, it's not gonna be spooky, it's just gonna be chock full of Apple MacBook Pro information and kind of helping you decide which one you should order because they're available to order right now. Now, these new Macs are going to be great for personal use and for business use. And if you're planning to use yours for business, well, we need to talk about passwords because let's face it, passwords are kind of hard to remember. So if you run a business and you don't have an easy way to secure your employees' passwords, well, they're probably going to store them on a sticky note like this. And that's why you need to check out Nordpass, an all-in-one team password manager solution that can fix this issue by storing online accounts and passwords by letting you set strong, unique passwords with Nordpass's strong password generator for every employee account, by saving all of your passwords in one secure place and then letting you autofill them whenever you need, whichever device you're on. Your employees are much more likely to use a strong password. And let's face it, whether you're a business owner or an employee, we've all been there, right? We've all forgotten an important password and had to send the dreaded password reset requests, which can be a lengthy and tedious process, costing you valuable time to your productivity. Or worse, we forgot an important login that only another coworker had and they went on vacation, they turned off all their notifications on their phone, and you're sending them hourly emails begging for the password information so you can get into the company account to pay a client. That's not based on a true story. That's not personal, I swear. Yeah, nightmare scenarios like these happen more often than you think, but Nordpass can remove those bottlenecks and make the process of sharing accounts simple by storing and automatically autofilling payment credentials that can be used for everyone on your team. And Nordpass offers additional layers of security with 24/7 monitoring for data breaches, which can instantly alert you or even someone on your team that has had their login credentials or payment information compromised. And data breaches can be costly and time-consuming to fix, so don't wait for it to happen to you and send Nordpass Business into action with a 3-month free trial by entering the activation code GregsGadgets at nordpass.com/GregsGadgets. And thank you so much to Nordpass for keeping my channel safe and for sponsoring this video. All right, before we kind of go over like the buying differences between these MacBook Pros, let me tell you what's new first. And I think the biggest new thing is that new base level M3 MacBook Pro model. Yeah, the 13-inch Touch Bar M2 MacBook Pro is dead. It's gone. You can't go to Apple's website. You can't buy a Touch Bar MacBook Pro anymore. And I think that is a very good thing. I didn't think really anyone should buy that laptop when it was out. It had the older design, had the Touch Bar still, right? And, you know, the M2 MacBook Air was just a better laptop for the price. Well, now Apple's kind of shaking things up a bit. They're giving us an M3 MacBook Pro, and yes, it's just with the M3 chip, not with the M3 Pro chip. And they're giving us basically the same design as the 14-inch MacBook Pro. So it's gonna have the same 14-inch, size, the same 14-inch display, even with 120Hz ProMotion display and an HDR-capable display that can go up to 1600 nits of peak brightness. And on all the MacBook Pros, they actually got a new update, and this is one of the only hardware updates to all the new MacBook Pros besides the chips, and that is that the display can actually get brighter for SDR content. So all these MacBook Pros can now get up to 600 nits of maximum brightness compared to the 500 nits on the previous models. And like Apple pointed out, that is going to match the brightness on the Studio display. But that new display is basically the only real noticeable hardware change besides the chips. Going back to the design a little bit, there are differences now that this new base level M3 MacBook Pro is here, right? This new 14-inch model. The most notable one, and this is probably the one that's going to affect most people, is that it does have one less Thunderbolt USB-C port than the M3 Pro or M3 Max machines. Now, don't worry, it still comes with an SD card slot, still comes with an HDMI port, but you will be missing one USB-C port on the base M3 model if you choose to go for that. The other design difference, which I don't think is going to make a big deal, is that it has one internal fan compared to the two internal fans found on the M3 Pro and the M3 Max. But I just figured like I should mention it because it is a difference. But yeah, the M3 is obviously a very energy efficient chip, more energy efficient than the Pro or the Max. So that single fan is going to cool it just fine. I'm not expecting this thing to have any thermal issues or anything like that. And then another thing I guess I should mention is that the weight is a little bit different, right? The base level M3 Pro MacBook Pro weighs 3.4 pounds. The M3 Pro weighs 3.5 pounds. Not a big deal, right? But again, these are little design differences and tweaks that you can find on Apple's website. And I guess the only other upgrade, if you can even call it that, is that the M3 Pro and up version of the MacBook Pro comes in a new darker space black color. But the regular M3 MacBook Pro still just comes in either silver or space gray. You cannot get that new space black coating. But yeah, in terms of new models, in terms of upgrades to the hardware, that's basically it, right? The big difference, obviously, for all of these machines is the new M3 chip architecture. And these things sound pretty insane. Now, obviously, on the base level M3 chip, it's a little less insane. It is Apple's first 3nm CPU, which is cool. It's going to be very energy efficient, hopefully, and it's going to be a bit more powerful. It still has an 8-core CPU design and a 10-core GPU design on the base level model, and it still goes up to 24 gigabytes of unified memory max. But as we go up the chip range here, the M3 Pro gets a 12-core CPU and an 18-core GPU. And one of the interesting things with this new M3 Pro chip is that you'll notice that the starting memory configuration for the M3 Pro is actually 18 gigabytes, which is 2 gigabytes more of unified memory starting than the old 16 gigabyte memory configuration. So if you're upgrading an M3 Pro chip to the max memory, you can now get 36 gigabytes of max unified memory compared to 32 on the older models, which is cool, right? It's just a little bit more of unified memory, but hey, any upgrade for free is kind of like appreciated. And then by far the most wildest new chip is the M3 Max, which gets a 16-core CPU. That's 4 more cores than the M3 Pro. And this is really interesting to me because Apple, up until this point with their M series chips, when they did the Pro and the Max only ever had more GPU cores. But this time they're actually adding additional CPU cores as well. So now the M3 Max isn't just, oh, you're gonna get a more powerful GPU, you're actually getting more powerful CPU performance on top of that. And that is really interesting. For the GPU, it's gonna go up to a 40-core GPU. And then for the unified memory, like the maximum amount of memory you can get on this machine is 128 gigabytes. And Apple pointed out that this is basically what the Max was on the M1 Ultra chip. And that's something I use on my Mac Studio. I have 128 gigabytes in there. So it's kind of crazy that I think they said in like 18 months, they were able to take that unified memory from the max configuration from the Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra and basically bring that over to the MacBook Pro. So, Apple put up a bunch of charts here. I don't want to go over the exact performance of these chips and kind of do a comparison because I don't really think that's fair. These are kind of like Apple's numbers here. We can maybe take them at their word. They seem really impressive. They seem really powerful, but I kind of want to do my own testing. I don't want to just take Apple's word for it and go, okay, it's going to be this much faster, blah, blah, blah. Well, we'll do take some of that comparisons when we go over like which model you should buy. But yeah, these are basically the new chips. They seem pretty impressive. I can't wait to start testing them. But again, let's get back to that question, right? Now, which MacBook Pro should you buy? There are basically a lot of new models here. You got the base level M3 14-inch, a new model. You got the middle 14-inch, which still comes in at $2,000. And then of course you have the 16-inch, all with these different configurations of the M3 Pro and the M3 Max chip. Okay, let's start with the bottom of this lineup. I think the most interesting question is this base level M3 MacBook Pro worth it? And I think this is gonna cause a lot of arguments here. Listen, it starts at $1,599, and I think the good thing about this model is it does start with 512 gigabytes of internal SSD storage. When I first heard the $1,599 price, I was thinking, oh, okay, this is gonna be like a 256 gigabyte configuration, but it does start with 512, which was a pleasant surprise for me. And it should, right? It's a very expensive laptop. It should definitely start with that. But the disappointing thing is is it starts with 8 gigabytes of unified memory. So yeah, this is kind of hard to answer because as we go and start to configure this laptop, what you're going to notice is if you're like, okay, 8 gigabytes memory, it's a little sparse. Let's go to 16 gigabytes of memory. Well, then that brings up the MacBook Pro to $1799. And when you're at the $1799 price point, if you spent $200 more, you could upgrade it to 24 gigabytes of unified memory, which you probably shouldn't do. Or you could go to the M3 Pro MacBook Pro 14-inch with the more powerful CPU, the more powerful GPU, and get an 18 gigabyte configuration with the additional USB-C port. It's going to be a more powerful laptop for your money for just $200 more. And I think a lot of people will look at that and go, okay, this base level M3 MacBook Pro isn't worth it. You know, Greg, I'm not buying it. No one should buy this MacBook Pro. It's a waste of money. And I'm not going that far. I actually think the 8 gigabyte configuration is worth it, right? And maybe even the 16 gigabyte configuration, depending on who you are. So the reason why I would say this base level model is worth it is because, number one, there's a lot of people who basically don't need the performance of a MacBook Pro, but they want the, HDMI port and the SD card slot that is on this MacBook Pro, which this has, and they mainly want the other hardware upgrades that this MacBook Pro has. The 120 hertz ProMotion HDR display, like that mini LED display on the MacBook Pro is amazing. Like if you were like, oh, I'm deciding between the MacBook Air and this new M3 base model MacBook Pro, and I really care about my display, how can I say this isn't worth it? It's a great display. And then you also get like the better speaker system with it. And on top of that, I think the one thing a lot of people are overlooking is that because this thing has the M3 chip, you also get much better battery life, at least according to Apple. So Apple is rating the 14-inch base level M3 MacBook Pro at 22 hours of battery life. For the M3 Pro MacBook Pro, man, all these names are confusing, that only gets an 18-hour rating of battery life. So yeah, some people who are power users might look at this base level MacBook Pro and say, it's not worth it, just upgrade to the other one for $400 more. But I look at it as a practical person and go, most people don't need M3 Pro power. Most people care about, things like the display rather than the, sheer performance of that machine. And one thing I know people definitely care about the most out of anything is battery life. And this machine has the best battery life. So I think it's worth it. Obviously, I got to do my own testing to make sure. But yeah, I think this was the machine that Apple had to make. Would I have liked it to be, $100 or $200 cheaper? Yeah, but then it starts getting a little close to that MacBook Air pricing territory. So this is the machine that Apple needed to make to replace the Touch Bar MacBook Pro. Hopefully, with future iterations, we get a little bit of bump on the base level memory. But yeah, I definitely think, at least so far, looking at this machine, it looks like it's worth it. Looks like a pretty good MacBook Pro if you don't really care about power. Okay, but what about upgrading from the base level MacBook Pro? Is that worth it? Yeah, this is definitely going to be worth it. As someone who's had experience with the M1 and M2 machines, when you upgrade to something like the M3 Pro, you're getting a lot more performance. Now, you have a lot of different options here with the M3 Pro. I just want to go over like a few key things that you need to be made aware of. So number one, this base level M3 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro does come with one less CPU core and 4 less GPU cores than the Max M3 Pro chip that is advertised. So to upgrade that, it's going to be an additional $200. Now, is this upgrade worth it for most people? I would probably say no, because especially on the CPU side, it seems like you're only losing one CPU core. It doesn't seem like a big deal. Maybe on the GPU side, it is a bigger deal. But if you're not dealing with graphic intensive applications, if you don't plan on gaming on the MacBook Pro, I don't think this is going to be a big deal. But either way, if you want to spend $200 more to get more performance, you can do that. And you have a lot of options here on the 14-inch model to get more performance, right? You can spend $600 more on the M3 Max. You're going to get 14 CPU cores. Again, don't forget, Max now has more CPU cores. This is a whole new thing that you have to factor in when you're buying these chips. And you're also going to get a 30-core GPU on that as well. And then For $900 more, you're gonna get a 16-core CPU and a 40-core GPU. That is the maximum chip. Don't forget, you can spec out a 16-inch MacBook Pro and a 14-inch MacBook Pro exactly the same. Now, there's things you need to be made aware of here, right? Number one, look at this. When you go press on the Max upgrade, you're gonna notice that the price increases more than you think, because it doesn't increase by just $600, it also increases by another $400 because you can only get an M3 Max chip with 32 gigabytes of unified memory on the base level for that chip. What's also, something you need to look out for is that, okay, you think, okay, 36 gigabytes unified memory, that's fine for me. But I want a more powerful CPU, I want a more powerful GPU. Well, you click on that and look what happens. The price just increased $200 more than you thought, right? Scroll down again. You got 48 gigabytes of unified memory on that maximum M3 Max chip. So as you're upgrading these machines, just be made aware that some of the chip decisions are tied to higher tiers of this unified memory. But if you're just someone that wanted like a more powerful CPU and a more powerful GPU, and you only want it like the 18 gigabytes of unified memory, it's not an option on the highest end M3 Max chip, and it's not even an option on the lower end M3 Max chip. You have to get 36 gigabytes of unified memory at least. Now, obviously, with the M3 Pro chips, you can still just start at 18 gigabytes of unified memory, but also be made aware, right? The maximum memory on the M3 Pro is also 36 gigabytes of unified memory. As you upgrade this, you're gonna get more performance. And then, like I said before, the Max chip now comes with more CPU cores. So before, it used to be easy, right? I used to tell people, okay, if you only care about CPU performance, don't spend the extra money on the Max chip. It's not worth it. You're only getting more GPU performance. But now, you're getting both. The other thing that you need to be made aware of, though, is the differences between the 14 and 16-inch model. Now, let's go ahead and look at the 16-inch model, because we haven't really done that yet. And what you're gonna notice here is that, obviously, the 16-inch model has a higher starting price than the base level 14-inch model. This one starts at $500 more. But the things you need to be made aware of here is it does come by default with the full M3 Pro chip. So it has the 12-core CPU and the 18-core GPU and 18 gigabytes unified memory, all that stuff, right? So when you do the price differences between these machines, you have to upgrade that base level 14-inch M3 Pro chip, and then you're gonna discover that instead of a $500 difference, it's really a $300 difference. And then you have all the same options as the 14-inch, right? You can go to 64 gigabytes of unified memory, you can go to 128 gigabytes of unified memory, you can go from 512 gigabytes of storage all the way up to 8 terabytes of storage. Like I said before, you can configure a 16-inch MacBook Pro the same exact way you can a 14-inch MacBook Pro. But the big question is, should I get a 14-inch MacBook Pro? Should I get a 16-inch MacBook Pro? I think the first thing you have to start with is, what screen size do you want, right? Obviously, if you want a more portable MacBook Pro, like this 14-inch MacBook Pro, well, yeah, go for that one. You're gonna get a really nice performing machine, especially, as you stick to the M3 Pro models, the performance should be exactly the same on the 14-inch and on the 16-inch. If you want the larger display, go for the 16-inch model, right? It's not rocket scientists. And then another big deciding factor besides performance, which I'll get to in just a second, is battery life. Now, like I mentioned before, the base level M3 MacBook Pro has 22 hours of battery life, but as you get to the M3 Pro MacBook Pro, the 14-inch model, that battery life decreases to 18 hours of battery life. But as you go to the 16-inch model, it again increases to 22 hours of battery life. So if you want pro performance with these Pro chips and you want the longest battery life possible, then the 16-inch model is for you. If you're looking to save money, you want a more portable laptop, well, then go with the 14-inch model. But let's talk about performance real quick. And this is kind of hard to answer because the M3 chip, it's on a new 3nm architecture, so maybe there's a few surprises here. But going on past history with the M1 Max, I should say, and M2 Max chips, there was actually a power difference on the Max chip versions between the 16-inch and 14-inch laptops. And I don't want to say it was like a drastic performance difference, but the 16-inch model, it was just a bigger body. It had a larger heat pipe, better thermal management on the Max chips. So it could perform better. I believe on the M1 Max and on the M2 Max, Apple had to like underclock the GPU cores in that to make that machine run thermally better. So if you are someone that really cares about performance when you're buying, like you're someone that's gonna buy this new 16-core CPU and 40-core GPU version of the M3 Max, and you're like, I don't want anything slowing down this machine, I want the fastest MacBook possible, then you should get the 16-inch model. If you're someone that's like, well, I really want a portable 14-inch MacBook Pro and I want the M3 Max chip as well, I wouldn't let that decision factor in too heavily right now unless reviews start coming out and saying something different. When I bought my MacBook Pro, I got the 14-inch model, I got the M1 Max. People said there was a performance difference, and there was. It did have like an underclocked GPU, but this thing was still blazing fast. So I would weigh how important performance is versus portability to you. It's going to be a different answer for everyone. But you're going to probably see some videos come out in like the near future saying, oh, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is faster and the 14-inch is thermally throttle. You're getting your bang for your buck if you go for the 16-inch model instead of the 14-inch model. That's kind of true, but it's like, well, if you want a portable laptop, why would you get the 16-inch model, right? The 14-inch was the right choice. But yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is, it is complicated to decide which MacBook Pro you want, especially if you have unlimited money, which I don't think everyone has. So a lot of these decisions are going to come down to budgetary factors, which is why I do think that new base level M3 MacBook Pro, even though I can just read the tea leaves, I'm sure it's going to get a lot of hate when people get their hands on it. I'm just saying, for people that want, the design of the MacBook Pro with the advanced display, I think that's gonna be a good model. But as you start to upgrade these MacBook Pros, you're obviously gonna get more performance. And I really think still maybe that sweet spot is that $2,000 model. That's personally one of the models I'm picking up for review because I always like to see how much bang for the buck can we get on these MacBook Pros. But hopefully this video helped you out because there are some key differences here, right? And I hope I went through all of them. I hope I gave you a good enough overview. But yes, it is complicated. So give me a break here. It is late. I'm not operating on full brain capacity either, but we hope this video helped you out. It's just me. There's no one else here. Why am I saying we? It's not like Tim Cook is here helping me out do this video. Just coffee is. All right. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, including full reviews of these MacBook Pros, make sure you subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. It is really late. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.